Ever struggled with your app's database? Don't know the best way to structure your database and link it to your front end? Don't worry, today we will be creating a simple book repository app using FlutterFlow and Supabase. Learn the best practices when it comes to designing effective database architecture and learn the key concepts of relationships and views to take your app to the next level.
Whole nother level.
Let's get to it right now. Alright, so first let's start off with the database schema. Over here I have this database schema which shows all the tables as well as all the columns that we need for our book repository app. Each of these post-it notes or each of these rectangles and squares represents a table each, and these arrows over here represents the foreign key relation from one table to another. For instance, our book ID column in our additions table over here has a foreign key relation to our books table, specifically the ID column, and there's also these relationships over here. Alright, so now that we have our database schema mapped out and we know exactly what columns should be in what tables and how the tables should relate to each other, let's see how we can take this and translate it into actual tables in our Supabase database. So let's get to it right now. Alright, so the first thing that you want to do is obviously you want to go to supabase.com and sign up for an account if you already haven't done so. But once you have successfully created an account and signed in, you should be brought to this dashboard page over here. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a new project, and you need to choose your organization, which would most likely be your email. So for mine, I have this tutorial organization, so I'll choose that. For our project name, we can just give it books repository. Then we can also insert a database password. Usually I'll just generate a password. And then we can click on create new project, and Supabase will handle the creation of the project for us. Yep, so this can take a while, so I'll see you again once the project has been successfully created. Alright, so Supabase has just finished setting up our project, and now to create our tables, we can go over to this left sidebar over here. You can see just under this home icon, there's this option for table editor, and that is exactly where we want to go in order to create our tables. Once you click on that, you can see that we are inside our table editor now. Alright, so right in the middle over here, there's a button to create a new table, and that's exactly what we want to do. So we click on this button, and here is where we'll be defining the columns as well as relationships for our table. So let's start out with the table name. Let's create our books table first. And one important thing to note about the naming of your tables, make sure that they are all in lowercase letters. So do not add capitalized letters to your table names, because that could cause some problems when trying to find your table and identify your table later when we are using the SQL editor. So just make sure to name your tables in fully lowercase letters so that there won't be any problems later. We can just leave the description as blank for now. And now for this enable role level security option, we actually want to disable this and we want to confirm. So role level security is just another additional layer of security to make sure that the data is well protected and can only be accessed by certain users of the app. For this simple tutorial app, we will not be publishing this on the App Store or Google Play Store, so no data is being compromised here. So we'll just disable role level security for our use case. But if you're making an actual app that you want to publish on the App Store and Google Play Store that will be used by real users, then you should enable role level security. And there are multiple tutorials on role level security on YouTube, so you should go check that out as well. Right, so we can continue to scroll down and you can see that we have reached the columns definition section. So this is basically where we'll be defining all of our columns. You see that every new table comes with predefined columns for ID as the primary key, as well as the creator at column as the creator at timestamp, so when the row was inserted. Let's go ahead and go back to our database schema and let's see what we need. So we need our ID column, which is actually already defined for us, and we also want our title column. So we can actually go ahead and remove this creator at column and we just name it as title. For the type over here, we want to choose the text. So this is basically a string and the title will be obviously a text. And now the next column that we will need is our ISBN number. Now at first glance, we may think that the ISBN number column should be of type int8. However, if we actually take a look at what the ISBN number looks like, you can see over here that there are dashes in between a lot of the digits as well. And you know that we can't include these dashes inside our number itself. So if we actually want to include these dashes, what we should do is we should actually store it as a type text instead of type int. So that's a thing to take note of as well. You need to be sure of what the type of your column should be. Alright, and last but not least will be language. So this will just be language, and the type will also be of type text. Now if you continue to scroll down, you can see that there are the foreign keys over here. There's this option for us to add foreign keys. But our books table does not have any foreign key relations to other tables. So there are no arrows pointing outwards from this books table to other tables, so we don't need to add any foreign keys. You can just click on save, and now you can see that our books table has been inserted into our table editor, along with all the columns as well. Yes, so it's that easy to actually create tables in Supabase. Now let's continue creating our other tables as well. And let's continue with our authors table over here. So you can click on new table, we can give it the name of our authors, and we also want to disable row level security. For the columns, we want to change this creator at column to our name column. And we also want to change the type to text. Next will be our country, then followed by birth date. So country will be of type text as well. But now birth date, instead of type text, Supabase actually has this option for a date option. So this will be a calendar date with the year, month, as well as date, which is exactly what we're looking for. So perfect. Now, our authors table will also not have any foreign key relations since there are no arrows pointing outwards from our authors table. So we can click on save, and perfect, we have our authors table done. Now let's work on our additions table. So this additions table is a little more interesting because we do have a foreign key relation to our books table. So let's see how we can do that. So first, the name will be additions, disable row level security, and fill in the columns. So this will be addition number. Now since this is an actual number, we can give it type integer 8. So it's a signed 8-bit integer. Next will be the publisher. The publisher will be of type text. Next will be the publish date. And since it's a date, we can give it the date type. And last but not least will be our book ID. And this is the column that will reference our books table. So in our books table, the ID column is of type integer 8. So this book ID will also need to have the same type, which is integer 8. And now we need to add a foreign key relation. So we need to click on this button, and we need to select the schema. You can see that the public schema is selected over here, and whenever you create a table in Supabase, it will always be in the public table, unless otherwise specified. So we want to select our public schema, and the table that we want to reference to is our books table. And now we can choose the column that is referencing our books table inside our additions table. As you can see here, this is our additions table. So for inside our additions table, we want to select book ID, and inside our books table, we want to reference the ID column. If we continue scrolling down, you can see that there are two more options that we can choose here, which is an action if reference row is updated and an action if reference row is removed. So the reference row over here refers to the row inside our books table. So this basically means what we want to do if a row in our books table is updated or deleted. So usually I just put both as cascade. So what cascade does is whenever the reference row is updated or deleted, the corresponding row is also updated and deleted as well. So we click on save, and then we can save our additions table. Alright, nice. So we have 3 out of 4 tables done. So now the last table would be our book author relation table. So we can just go ahead and create one last table, and we can name it book author relation. We want to disable row level security, and we want to add our columns over here. Remember, the book author relations table also needs to have an ID column as the primary key. And now we need an author ID. Which will be of type integer 8, as well as a book ID, which will also be of type integer 8. And now we have to add the foreign key relationships for both of these columns. So we need to select the public schema once more, and let's deal with the authors table first. We want to choose the author ID table, which will reference the ID column inside of our authors table. And likewise, we need to set this as cascade. Cascade, yes. And now we do the same thing, but for our books table. And then we just save this, and then we save our table. Alright, great. So now we have our 4 tables over here. But one more thing that I'd like to introduce in this video is the concept of Supabase Views. In Supabase, a view is a virtual table that is created from one or more existing tables. But unlike regular tables, a view doesn't actually store any actual data. Instead, it updates dynamically by fetching data from your already existing tables. So you can't really edit a view, but whenever the data is updated in its constituent tables, the view will be automatically updated as well. So a view is basically a good way of joining tables together so that you can access it all at one go without having to create complex SQL queries. So now let's see how we can create views in Supabase. Well, in order to create views in Supabase, we have to go over to our SQL editor. And inside our SQL editor, we do have to write some code. But don't worry, the code is very simplistic, and I'll be walking through it step by step so that you all can follow as well. So let's say I want to create a view of books data together with my editions data. So I want to get the title of the book, ISBN number, language, as well as the edition number, publisher, as well as published date. So how can we do that? So inside our SQL editor, we want to type create. This just tells Supabase that we want to create something new. And what do we want to create? We want to create a view. And what is the name of our view? Well, we can just give it the name books editions, book edition view. So this is the name of our view that we want to give it. And then we have to type in the keyword as. And then we can enter into a new line and put tab so that we have some separation to make our code clearer. And then after this, we have to list all of the columns that we want. So which columns do we want? Well, we want our ID, title, ISBN number, as well as language columns for our books table inside our books table, which is basically all of our columns in the books table. So when we want all of the columns in our books table, we can just type in books. So that's the name of our table, the books table, dot, and we can actually type in asterisk. So what this asterisk means, it basically means all of the columns inside of our books table. And then we can type comma, and then we can enter into a new line. And now we want to get the columns inside our editions table as well. But we don't want to get all of the columns. We only need the edition number, publisher, publisher date. So we only need these 3 columns. So then I can type in editions, which is the name of our editions table, and then dot. You can see there's auto filling it in for us. So we want our edition number, comma, editions dot publisher, comma, as well as editions dot publish date. And we don't have to add the last comma over here. Now you can go backspace to go back to this indentation. And then now we need to type in the keyword from. And this from word just basically specifies which tables you need to get it. So we want to get it from our books table. Then we have to enter once more, go to the next line. And now, since we are joining two tables together, we then want to give the keyword join. And now we need to specify the table that we want to join to our books table, which will be our additions table. But that is not enough. We also need to give a condition to join our tables on. And this condition will be where our book ID is equal to the ID column inside our books table. So we need to give it the keyword on, and now we can give the condition over here. So this condition will be additions dot book ID is equal to our books dot ID column. And now to end off this query, we'll just type a semicolon. And if we scroll to the right, over here, we see that we can run our query. Okay, and unfortunately, you can see that once we run the query, there is an error over here. And this error tells us that there is a syntax error at or near books over here. So, what do you do when you run into an error? Usually, what I like to do is I like to copy the whole code, and I like to go to ChatGPT. And in ChatGPT, I'll just paste the code over here. So I'll just paste my code in ChatGPT. And once I paste it, I'll just give it to ChatGPT to see what's wrong. And you can see that ChatGPT is so great that it's able to tell me what the error is. So my error is that I forgot to insert this select keyword. So that is very important after this as statement. So after this first statement, I also need to type in select. So you can see how we can use AI to help us solve errors in our code as well. And it's so much quicker and efficient than debugging it yourself. So we can click on run. And you can see that we have this beautiful message, success, no rows returned. If we go back to our table editor, you can see now that we have this new row over here, this new books edition view. If we click on that, you see that it contains the ID column, title, ISBN number, as well as language, but now it also contains the edition number, publisher, as well as published date columns. If we go into our book and we insert a new book, let's say we give it a title of book 1. ISBN number, we'll just give it a random number. Language, English. If we click on save, we have a new book over here. Now, if we go into editions, and now let's add a new edition for our book. So we insert a new row. This will be the first edition. Publisher will be me. So I just published a new book today. That's great. And then the book ID, we can select the record and we want to reference this book ID. So this will be the first edition of book 1. We can also insert another row to create a second edition. So wow, 2 editions in one day. Or maybe for the publisher, we just give it a different publisher. Then for the publish dates, let's set it as 19th of November. But it will be the same book ID 1. So we have 2 different editions for the same book. Now if we go into our books editions view, you can see that there are now 2 rows in this view over here for the same book, but it has different edition numbers. And one good thing about views is that they update in real time as well. So whenever a new edition for a book is inserted, then a new row is also inserted automatically inside our books edition view. And now we can also get all of these data at once. So over here, I have already made a template for our book repository app containing the home page, which shows all of the book covers over here, as well as a book details page for the actual individual books themselves, containing the book cover, the book title, author name, ISBN number, as well as all the other descriptions from our author's information, as well as the edition's information over here. So I've already put a link down in the video description to clone this basic template project so that you don't have to go ahead and remake all of this UI, you can just copy that, clone the project, and we can get started on actually linking up the back end side of things. Alright, so first things first, we would need to actually link up our FlutterFlow project with our Supabase project. So in settings and integrations, over here, we want to scroll all the way down to integrations, and you can see that there's a Supabase integration. We want to enable Supabase, and here we need to pass in an API URL as well as an add-on key. We go back to our Supabase dashboard, and we scroll all the way down to project settings. And inside project settings, under configuration, there's an option for API. And we want to copy our project URL and paste it as our API URL. Then inside our Supabase dashboard, we want to copy this add-on public key, and we'll paste it inside this add-on key text field over here. Next, we want to press get schema, and now you should see that all of our tables as well as our views are reflected over here, meaning that Supabase has successfully been integrated with FlutterFlow. So it's important to get schema whenever you make any changes to your tables. So for example, if I add a new column inside my authors table, or if I add a completely new table itself, or even if I create a new view, then we will have to go and get schema once more so that FlutterFlow is linked up and updated to the newest version of our Supabase project. Alright, so now that that's out of the way, we can go back to our widget tree, and now we can actually reflect our individual books inside of this list view over here. So with the list view selected over here, I want to go ahead to this option, backend query, and I want to add a new query. For the query type, it will be a Supabase query since we're using Supabase. And the table that I want to query is actually the books table, since each one of these containers will reflect one book that the user can click on to go to the book's details. The query type will be a list of rows since we want to get multiple books, and we don't need to add any filters since we want to get all of the rows inside our books table. So we'll click on confirm and confirm. And you should now see that for under this list view widget over here, there's a Supabase query for books. So great. And then now we can actually go ahead and link up the data so we can reflect the image of the book inside this UI. And I just realized that our books table is actually missing one extra column, which is actually the cover image of the book. So let's go ahead and quickly add that column now. So with our books table selected, you can scroll all the way to the right and you see this plus icon. We can click that and we can add a new column. So we can add cover underscore image. For the type, it will be of type text. So it's a string, and yep, we can just save it. So now we can go back to our FlutterFlow dashboard. And since we added a new column over here, we made a change to our table, we have to go ahead and get schema once more. So this is what I was talking about. So under settings and integrations, under Supabase, we need to get schema. You can see that under the books table, there is no column called profile or cover image. So once we get schema, yes, you can see that under the books table, we have a new column over here, cover image. So great. Now we can use the data associated with the cover image column inside of our FlutterFlow app here. So with the container selected, we'll go to the right hand corner over here. And under background image, we want to choose that option. And for this path, we'll tap on this orange icon over here. And we'll set it to our books row, cover image view. And now this will generate the image dynamically based on the data from our cover image row for each of these books itself. Alright, great. So now we want to add the action where when the user taps on this container, he will be sent to the book's detail page. So let's tap on this container, we'll go to the action flow editor, and we'll open the action flow editor. We want to choose the on tap action trigger, we want to add a new action, and we want to navigate to our book's detail page, book details page. close out of this, and now we can go to our book details page. However, now we face another problem, which is that we do not have information in this page, since we only have the information of the book from this home page itself. So we actually need a way to pass the chosen book details from our home page to our book details page. How we can do that? Well, in our book details page, we can define something called a page parameter. So we click on our book details page root page over here, and at the top right hand corner over here, you can see that there's an option to add a new page parameter. So we'll go ahead and add a new page parameter, and we'll call this parameter book underscore ID. Oh, and one more thing about the parameter name. Note that the name must be in this thing called camel case, which is basically the first word has to have all lowercase letters, and subsequent words will have the first letter of the word uppercased. So instead of book underscore ID, it will be book, and then capital I and D. So yep, that's the parameter name. And for the type, it will be of type integer, since we are passing our book's ID column over here. So it's a required parameter, since we obviously need the book to exist before we can show any data, and we'll click on confirm. And now in our home page, when the user taps on this book, so we open the action flow editor once more, you see that now in our navigate to action, we are able to pass a parameter over here. So we need to pass our book ID parameter, which will be from our books row and the ID column of that book. So we can close out of this, and now we can go back to our book details page. Alright, so now that we have access to the exact book ID chosen by the user, we can actually use this book ID to query the necessary data to display it inside of this page here. So let's first query our book data. So inside of this column, we can add a new query by clicking on this backend query option, and we can add a Supabase query. For the table, it will be our books table, and instead of a list of rows as the query type now, we only want to choose a single row, since we only need the book data of a single book. And now we can add filters over here. We need to add a filter, and the filter has to be where the ID column of our books table is equal to our book ID page parameter. So this only gets the row of this specific book. And then now let's change this information. So let's change the image first. So inside background image, we'll click on this orange icon once more, and under book rows, this will be the cover image. Now for the book title, you scroll up to text properties, and we'll choose book rows title. We also need to specify a default variable value. I'll just give it null. Alright, so now that we have defined the title, we have linked up the title, we move on to this byline over here. So you can see that this is a text combination, and we actually have to give the author name. But notice, if we go into our books row query, we do not have access to the author name itself. And that is because this is just querying our books row. We need to access the data from our authors table instead. So how can we actually access this data? Well, this is where the concept of Supabase Views comes in. We can join our books and authors table together so that we can do a single query to get the data from the authors as well. So let's go into our SQL editor, and let's go ahead and create a new code snippet. And here we want to create a new view. We'll give this view name book authors view as enter and tab select, and the columns that we need are all the columns from the books table, so books dot star comma, and now let's see what data we need from our authors table. Well, technically for that query we only need the author name, so we can actually just go ahead and type in authors.name because we only need the name of the author. And then now we can type in from. And now the base table that we want to query for a many-to-many relationship is actually the intermediate table itself. So we need to get the intermediate table, which is our book author relation. So for this from, instead of books or authors, it will be book underscore author underscore relation table. Then now we want to, based on this book author relation, join our books table on the condition where the books.id is equal to our book author relation table dot book ID. Then we enter into a new line, and then we also have to join the data from our author table. So you join our authors table on a condition where our authors dot ID is equal to our book author relation table dot author underscore ID. Then we can type in a semicolon, and this is how we join two tables which have a many-to-many relationship together. Then we can click on run. However, when we try to run this query, we actually get met with a syntax error. So yep, this is a syntax error here. So let's try to look at what is wrong over here, and I think I see the problem. It's because over here we added a comma, so it's taking this row or this line over here as an actual column inside of the select query. So we actually have to delete this comma, and now that when we try to run, we should see this beautiful statement over here: success, no rows returned. Right, so nice. Let's go to our table editor, and inside of our table editor over here, you should see this new book authors view. So that's great, with the name of the author over here. Nice. So now that we have created a new view inside of Supabase, we have to go ahead to go and settings and integrations. And inside of our Supabase integrations, we have to get schema once more, so that we now have access to our book authors view. So we can go back into our widget tree, and now inside of this page over here, the book details page, inside of our column, instead of querying our books table, we actually want to query our book authors view table, and we still want to get a single row. And for the filters, it will be where our ID is equal to our book ID. And actually, for this filter or for this query, we're only getting one row. So we're getting one row inside of our book authors view, but one book could have multiple authors. But to make it more simple, we'll only be getting a single row. So think of it as like getting the main author. We'll still show the other authors here, so it should be fine. So now in this byline over here, let's go ahead and change our author name. So for text 2, let's go under book authors view, and now we can choose the author name. Nice. Last but not least is the ISBN number. So this will be under book authors view, ISBN number. We also have to give it a default value of null. Okay, great. So we have this top section done. Now let's move on to this authors section. And now to show all the authors of this book, we need to select this row, and inside of this row, we need to add a Supabase query. So it's Supabase query. And now for the table, instead of querying the authors table, we actually need to query our book authors view table. So why can't we just query our authors table? That is because the authors table only contains information about the author. It does not contain information about which authors wrote which book. And that information is only stored in our books editions view. So we need to query our book authors view. Oops, not book editions view, sorry, the book authors view. So with this book authors view table selected, we then need to query a list of rows since multiple authors can write the book. And we need to add a filter over here. This filter will filter where the ID, which is the book ID, is equal to our book ID page parameter over here. We click on confirm, and you can see that multiple authors are generated. Author data is generated. But we actually need more author data, which is currently not present in our book authors view. So we actually have to go ahead to our SQL editor, and we have to add some more data over here. So apart from the author's name, it will be authors dot birth date and authors dot country. Remember, for the last column, do not add a comma over here. But now if we try to run, you can see that there's an error saying that the relation already exists. So in the first line over here, we need to add these words: create or replace. Then if we click on run, you see that now that it shows this beautiful statement of success no rows returned. And now if we go into our table editor and check out our book author view, we have more data here as well. So now that we have edited our view, we will have to go into settings and integrations once more and get schema again. Now we can go back to our widget tree and actually link up the data here. So for this country text, we will change this text field and we'll choose our author's view row, this second one over here, which corresponds to the column. So when I hover over this, you can see that it's lighting up on the left side. So you need to choose this one and we'll choose the country. Give it a default variable value of null. For the birth date, we'll change this to the birth date of the author, default variable value of null, and the name, change this to the name of the author. Now let's move on to our editions table, or editions data. So with the row selected, we also want to create a new backend query. And for this backend query, it'll be a Supabase query. And now for the table over here, it'll be our book editions view. So the query type will likewise be a list of rows. And for the filter, it'll be the same, where we're filtering where the book ID is equal to our page parameter book ID over here. Confirm. Now we have multiple editions. Let's change this text property over here. For the second text, it will be our book editions view, and we'll choose the edition number. Now for the publisher, our book editions view publisher. Give it a default variable value as well, and last but not least will be the publish date. Alright, so yep, we have linked up all the data successfully. Now one last thing that we have to do is we have to add the navigate back action for this icon. So let's quickly go into the open action flow editor of this icon. When the button is tapped, we'll just choose this navigate back option. Alright, yes, and that should be it. Now we can go ahead and actually add some data, dummy data over here, and go ahead and test it out in test mode to see that everything works perfectly. Alright, so let's just open test mode for now, and let me just quickly add some dummy data. Alright, so I've just added some dummy data with 3 books with cute cats as the pictures, as well as a few editions and a few authors as well. And you can see that we see all 3 covers for these 3 books. So let's say this book seems pretty interesting. If I go ahead and click into it, I can see this description page. So this book is called Book 1 by Author 1 and has an ISBN number of 123456789. If we go ahead and check our Supabase database for Book 1, yes, that's the correct ISBN number. Alright, so if we scroll down to the description over here, we can see the authors over here. And looks like these 2 authors are the same for some reason, but our editions are working correctly. And the date is also not formatted well, so let's quickly see what's wrong inside. So the problem likely lies in the name as well as the country. So let's actually go ahead and do this again. So we remove this, and I think instead of country, this should be name actually. So we need to check to choose the correct view. So I think the reason for that happening was because we chose the wrong book author's view row. So we need to choose the one that corresponds to the query on this row itself, which will be this one. And we need to choose the name over here. Now let's check the birth date. The birth date should be correct. So, but just to make sure, let's do it again. And this will be this first one, birth date. And now since this is a date field, let's try to format this date. So we choose date time format instead of no further changes. And we can choose the one that we like the most. Let's just choose this one. This one looks pretty good. And confirm that. And last but not least will be the country over here. So we remove this first. then we go ahead and choose the correct book author's view, and this will be country. Right, so now let's quickly change this publish date as well. For available options, we'll choose datetime format, and we'll choose let's choose this one as well. Yep, then we confirm. Then now let's go ahead and quickly reload test mode. Okay, so let's try seeing the data for this book again. And great, now we have two different authors and the dates are being formatted correctly as well. So if we go back and choose a different book, this book only has one author as well as one edition. Alright, so that wraps it up for this video. If you're interested in learning how to use FlutterFlow and Supabase to create more complicated apps, such as this Instagram clone right here, be sure to click on this video. I hope to see you there.